Okay, folks, we are on page 116. What is elasticity of demand? So we're going to read through and I'll stop and explain. You have learned that there are many factors that influence the demand for a product. However, those factors alone are not the only influences on the sales of goods and services. How does the owner of an electronics store know how to price his or her goods so that the entire inventory of PDAs, or personal digital assistants, are sold? Yeah, a PDA is like I don't know, it's some combo of like a calendar that was in a phone, but it was like an electronic calendar back in the day. Okay. Store owners know that consumers are responsive to changes in price. Let's examine the relationship between price and demand and how it affects consumers' buying habits. Consumer demand is not limitless because you have to remember, wants are limitless, but demand is not, because you got to actually have the ability to pay for something for it to be considered actual demand. Otherwise, it's just a want. It is highly dependent on price, but as you know, demand is seldom fixed. As a result, price is also seldom fixed. Generally, people assume that if prices rise, consumers will buy less, and if prices drop, consumers will buy more. However, this isn't always the case. The relationship between price and demand is somewhat more complicated than you might think. Change in consumer buying habits is also related to the type of good or service being produced and how important the good or service is to the consumer. The marketplace certainly is very sensitive to changes in price, but not all increases in price will result in a decrease in demand, because sometimes you don't have a choice. Even if the price goes up, you still got to buy it. I think our good example of that is insulin or EpiPens. They have had tremendous changes in those items, but it doesn't really change people's buying habits because turns out you have to have them. Regardless, top of the next page, economists use the term elasticity of demand to describe how responsive consumers are to price changes in the marketplace. So that means how much do people change their buying habits based on a change in price? Back to the book. Economists describe demand as being either elastic or inelastic. Demand is elastic when a change in price, either up or down, leads to a relatively larger, a bigger change in the quantity demanded. The more responsive to the change the market is, the more likely the demand is elastic. On the other hand, demand is inelastic when a change in price leads to a relatively smaller change in the quantity demanded. For this reason, elastic goods and services are often said to be price sensitive. So in the case of inelastic demand, changes in price have little impact on the quantity demanded. Another way to think about elasticity is to imagine that a rubber band represents quantity demanded. When the quantity demanded increases by a marked amount, the demand is elastic and the rubber band stretches. If the quantity demanded barely changes, demand is inelastic and the rubber band stretches very little. So let me see if I can explain that. You've got a change in price. Maybe something goes up. Maybe gas is going to go up 10 cents a gallon. Do a ton of people run out and buy more gas before that price change happens? Or, in order to avoid the price increase? Maybe not. But okay, so let's say the price change happens. Do people dramatically stop buying gas because it has changed 10 cents? Probably not. If gas were to go up a lot, 50 cents, $1 a gallon, maybe people would cut back on their gas consumption quite a bit. So it is just, elasticity represents the change in consumers' behavior due to a price change. If the change, the reaction is bigger than the price change, then it's considered to be elastic. If the reaction is smaller relatively to the price change, then it's considered to be inelastic. Okay, let's go back to the example in the book. I think I will upload this because it takes a really long time to upload. And then when we come back, I'll be reading Elasticity of Demand for Goods and Services.